What's his name? What's the fellow that sings Piano Man?
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel.
I almost said bring us a song.
So
That's him. I love everything. Bring us a song right.
We got in the rental car and a Billy Joel song started.
Okay.
And we were discussing how neither my mom nor I were particularly Billy Joel fans.
It is Billy Joel, right?
It is. You're correct.
Yeah.
Not Don McLean.
No.
So it was not Piano Man that was playing. It was just a different Billy Joel song.
Okay.
But it reminded me of this tweet that I had seen that was something to the effect of, for a song called Piano Man, the guy with the harmonica won't shut the fuck up.
There is a lot of harmonica in that song.
Considerably more harmonica than piano.
It's a classic, but it's not one that really, it just feels sort of like a vague drinking song to me, even though I don't know if it's about that at all. Just like,
I mean, the microphones smell like a beer. That's kind of one of my favorite lyrics.
It's in the same vein for me as James Taylor. It just doesn't. I recognize that, like, objectively, this is good music. Yeah. It does nothing for me.
I like James Taylor a lot more personally, but it's
like he's just a really good guy to hang with.
Yeah, there's just like a rainy day Sunday. There's just a rainy day Sunday vibe for me.
Is that one of his famous songs?
No. I don't think so.
That's a Maroon 5 song.
That is a Maroon. Yeah, okay.
Maroon
5.
But
no, there's just like a peaceful vibe to James Taylor that I can get down with. Where Billy Joel just feels like somebody's having a laugh at me.
Let it be known, Daniel gets down to James Taylor.
I would do that, yes.
Yeah.
And on that note, hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Good morning, Namarie. Welcome to the Under Towers podcast, your library for all things super nerdy, specifically science fiction and fantasy, specifically books. I am Steven.
I'm Daniel.
Sam.
And before we get into news-related things, I wanted to add something from our last episode. I am starting my own books. We'll see where that goes as the podcast goes.
You mean writing, not like
writing?
So
yes,
side
I'm only
reading.
just now starting to read.
I am reading other things in addition to what we're reading.
I am starting to write, and I started revisiting for the however manyth time Brandon Sanderson's free lecture series on YouTube. It's essentially like an entire semester's worth of courses that he taught on how to write. Awesome. And one thing that I had completely forgotten about that I found very interesting, and I'm paraphrasing, and maybe forgive me if I did not get what he was saying correct, but what I took from what he was saying on the topic of genre is that in his mind, frequently, genre is looked at incorrectly, meaning that what we kind of blanket term genre as far as like fantasy, science fiction, horror, Western, etc., is actually more about setting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the actual genre is going to be what your plot is more about. So things like a heist or coming of age.
That's where like a
chosen one.
Crime does fit that sort of, but it's more like if it's a murder mystery.
Yeah,
murder mystery. They're different. Crime noir is its own kind of thing too.
Well, and his personal example was his book Mistborn, which is an epic fantasy, but epic fantasy is more the setting. The actual genre is a heist story. It's a heist story. So I thought that was pretty interesting in the context of what we had been discussing on
that makes sense.
Totally.
Just a couple news things here today. And these are actually today, both things that I have are tabletop related.
Nice, like the gaming thing.
Yeah, tabletop gaming. That's another realm of nerddom that I am solidly entrenched in.
I was actually telling Daniel about this the other day. If I had unlimited resources, time, money, like I would probably spend much more time doing
For sure.
tabletop gaming.
Well,
But go on
we'll
with
talk.
the news. Yeah.
So in the miniature wargaming world, there was a game that was wildly popular in parts of Europe as a French game. It's called Rackham, and it had glorious models. I remember on one trip to Paris actually going and purchasing some at a game store in Paris. And then when I last went back in 2012, unfortunately, the game had given up the ghost, and the company that bought it went under, or that made it went under.
Lame.
So I never really got to play it. It was a competitor for a time with Games Workshop. It was kind of the other biggest game. I don't think it ever really got a solid foothold in the U.S. And it has been attempted. There's been attempts to resurrect it. There was a horrible dumpster fire of a Kickstarter several years ago that I thankfully resisted the temptation to get into. That essentially just took everybody's money and ran.
Fire
in an
Festival.
attempt to kind of, yeah, exactly, but trying to resurrect it. But it has since been assigned, all the property rights for Rackham has been assigned to Monolith, which is an awesome miniatures and board game company. The thing that I know them the most is they did a series of Conan board games with some really amazing miniatures, kind of a story, cooperative, competitive miniatures board game.
Nice.
So that's kind of all the news in that realm so far. There's more stuff coming, but I'm excited about it because it was a game that I always wanted to get in, but of course it went under, and then you could find miniatures online and they were all wildly expensive. And then the other thing that's coming more quickly, have you guys ever played the 2-player board game, Seven Wonders Duel?
No.
It's pretty widely considered one of the best 2-player board games. I got it for my wife for Chris. You know what? Surprisingly, it is better than Battleship, I think. But it's a 2-player version of the Seven Wonders board game, and you essentially it's a card game. You flip over cards and purchase cards with various resources that you can get throughout the game to build your own ancient city and civilization.
Like
it's
Age
kind
of
of
Empires.
Greco-Roman / Egyptian time period. And there's a military aspect, there's a science aspect, different kind of tracks that you can go down to try to win the game. It's great. It's fast-paced. It's amazing. It's perfectly streamlined for 2 players. And there is a Lord of the Rings version that is in the works. It's called Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. You play as either Rivendell or Mordor. So it's not just a reskin, because in Seven Wonders Duel, you don't have an assigned faction. You can pick from any cards. I'm assuming, considering that you play as either Rivendell or Mordor, that there is some sort of faction-specific cards. So yeah, it's not just a reskin. It's essentially a new version of the game. And I'm super pumped for that. I love the original game, and
Sounds dope.
should be fun.
I actually have one bit of news too.
Go for it.
Yeah, so J.B. Jackson, who's an author that I read his first book called Shagduk, is releasing his sequel and has a Kickstarter out. And as a small-time author, wanted to mention that. So he's hoping, I think, to publish that in August, as long as the enough money comes in. But the first book was it's about a librarian in the 70s who gets wrapped up in the occult by reading a grimoire, and he gets haunted by a demon. And
Love it.
It's awesome. Very weird, very strange.
Oh, this is the one you gave me.
We had talked about it a while back.
I need to read that.
Yeah. It's a first person journal diaries thing, and it's a book. It was one of the best things I read a couple years, probably in 2022. It
kind of reads like screw tape letters almost.
It's sort of like that. And
Is the Kickstarter active right now?
It is.
Do you know how long it's going to go? By the time
I need to check
episode.
No, it'll be going for a little bit.
Okay.
I haven't actually contributed directly myself, but I'm going to do it. I forgot and meant to do it. And
we'll go ahead and put
the
link to the Kickstarter in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So whatever you're listening to this on, check down in the show notes and check out the Kickstarter for this book.
Yeah. Shagduk, and then the next one is Ursula of Ulm. So
love it.
2 books. Nice. Cool. I don't
All
have
right.
any news.
That's okay.
Today was not a bad day.
That's all right. All right. So onwards to our main discussion for the evening, and I think that this is going to be a fun discussion. I will say, whether it's for this or for our end of the episode topic, get your milk, because it's going to get spicy.
Nice.
So
it really does help milk with that.
For our main discussion tonight, and the reason why this didn't make it into a news section is because we wanted to talk about it in more depth, is we're going to talk about The Hunt for Gollum.
Yay.
So first,
we're not going to be dicks about it.
We're not. Let's talk about what we know.
Yep.
Because it's not a lot. What we know is that Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philippa Boyens are back to produce. Walsh and Boyens are, I believe, also writing it.
I believe so.
It's a lot more to write to it. Yeah.
Andy Serkis is not only reprising his role as Gollum, but he's directing it.
Oh, I didn't think I remembered that.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that he was the second unit director for the Hobbit movies.
Okay.
And he's done some other directing things as well. And then Weta Workshop is involved. I believe it's filming in New Zealand. So essentially the gang is back together.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that we really know at this point is that it's coming out in 2026.
Okay.
Now, we will turn to the text.
Yeah, we need some, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
Isn't the movie based on one sentence?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, let me see, where am I here? I believe that this is the only other thing that we know. Well, that was years ago. I have paid for it since with many dark and dangerous days. The trail was long cold when I took it up again after Bilbo left here, and my search would have been in vain but for the help that I had from a friend, Aragorn, the greatest traveler and huntsman of this age of the world. Together we sought for Gollum down the whole length of Wilderland without hope and without success. But at last, when I had given up the chase and turned to other paths, Gollum was found. My friend returned out of great perils, and bringing the miserable creature with him.
Yeah, that's about all we've got.
That's Gandalf, right?
That was Gandalf.
That was a good Ian McKellen, by the way.
Thank you.
An American version of him.
So,
because he is Gandalf, right?
He is. Yeah, he is Gandalf. So that's.
Although, if you want American Gandalf, you can watch the cartoon Hobbit. That's American Gandalf.
I don't want to watch that.
Just as I love it, by the way.
And you can love it.
Sidebar over,
and that's fine. Who is that guy though? Maybe.
So that's all we know. That's all we know as far as the making of the film, and that's all we know really as far as the text. And I correct me, Daniel, if I'm forgetting something. Maybe there's some additional information in the appendices, but I think it's pretty much, if there is, it's maybe 2 paragraphs expanded from that one.
Yeah, paragraph. So there's a little more in the appendices, I do believe, but it's more I think it's literally like a chronology of Gandalf hunting for Gollum, Aragorn joins. I think it's like a date situation, which that's about it. And then you get in the Council of Elrond, you get Aragorn talking about hunting Gollum a little bit and not enjoying it, and then you get the elves talking about holding him because they're basically there to let the reason they're at the council actually is to tell everyone that they lost Gollum, which, because it's called The Hunt for Gollum, my guess is that won't be in the film. But it could be. Although I will say, just Gollum being miserable with elves in captivity sounds like a terrible time.
I'm gonna guess that because it's the hunt for Gollum, that's also my guess. Probably ends with,
and just because it just seems like a bad vibe, unless it's gonna be just a little bit, unless they've got something else planned of Gollum escaping with if they've got things in mind for that. it will just. My guess is that would be like some quick cuts, and then Gollum getting rescued by orcs.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, but obviously it's hard. It's really hard to say.
In context, all they get from Gollum is the information that he kind of told the Nazgul about Bilbo.
Yeah, well,
Right, and then they like let him go. Well, then he like kind of hangs around
because Gandalf reads his mind. Is basically what happens.
Well, what I'm saying is like they hunt for him, but like they let him go. Like
no, they send him to the elves. No, he gets captured. He escapes because he climbs to the top of a tree, and then he gets rescued by orcs.
I mean, it's pretty awesome how Gollum is so slippery.
He is very slippery.
The thing that gives me hope about the entire film, and to be honest, I actually really liked Rings of Power. And then after reading about it, I was like, oh, now I don't. A little bit. But hold on. Then I centered myself and thought, do I want to rewatch this show? And then I felt, not at all. Not one bit. Do I want to rewatch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy? Absolutely, all the time.
Forever, yes.
But for this, my point that I wanted to make is that I loved Rogue One out of all the Star Wars movies. And that movie was also based on one line.
Right.
Many Bothans died to get this information. Whole movie right there.
Yeah.
And surmising the lines. So for me, I'm like, maybe this could be the best.
Well,
maybe
what I'm hoping for, and I'm not actually gonna set to, but I'm hoping for a pretty stylized movie with very little dialogue and just kind of like almost like I would almost love like a nature documentary about Gollum, like just traversing through the wilderness,
like how he survives and stuff kind of
thing. And that like I mean if it's filmed well, which I would imagine it would be, I actually think that could be good. If they're not going to do, as it seems, focus on what Aragorn's doing, and it seems like they're going to be centering Gollum. It's interesting though that they are doing that after the Gollum video game flopped really hard.
Well,
I don't know if that has anything to do with anything.
I should have researched this more before getting into it. I don't know. I'm not even sure what studio it was that produced the Gollum video game.
I don't remember either.
But
I watched a little bit of play time with it, but it
looks absolutely terrible.
It's just interesting. There's a lot of Gollum content.
Yeah.
Who is maybe and again, this isn't me. I don't want to be hypercritical. Is probably the character in the entire world I want to hang out with the least.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I won't see the film and I won't be excited about it and very hopeful it'll be good, but it's very curious to me that is the choice that they went when there is so much in the Lord of the Rings world that there is to choose from. My guess is it's mostly about Andy Serkis and his talent and giving like him more time to do his thing. I feel like that's what it has to be about. Well, it's probably that, and you've probably got the Hollywood thing of, interestingly, Philippa Boyens, who helped write and not write, but helped produce the War of the Rohirrim movie that's coming out, did an interview with Nerd of the Rings, which is a wonderful Tolkien creator. I believe only on YouTube, but he makes really great Tolkien content. If you're just got a hankering for Tolkien and not like listening or the books or watching the movies, it's just great. His lore is great and he's got good takes. But she did an interview with him and he asked her like, what films would you like to see made if it was time to go back to the things? And I don't know if it was, this was a couple months before Hunt for Gollum was announced, so I don't know what discussions have been had in that point, but she mentioned Fram and Skatha, which is the man of Rohan who ends up fighting a dragon, and it's a very it's a Third Age world, but it's a very its own story and world. And she was kind of making the point that she would really like to dive into totally uncharted territory, and he even brought up the war in Angmar as a world that would be really cool to see. And she was like, well, we've kind of done that already. Even though it's a different story, it's still like fighting the Witch King.
Right.
So it's interesting to me that literally after saying that, we're here. So, but obviously she's a part of the project, so she's going to feel good about it to some degree, but I would turn it over to you.
I'm going to wildly speculate. This is nothing but pure and utter the wildest of speculations. I'm not the first one to come up with this idea. However, what I would love to see, and what I wonder with Peter Jackson's pre-Lord of the Rings filmmaking, where he was primarily making horror films, I think it would be pretty sick to see a movie about Gollum being hunted from Gollum's perspective, where Aragorn and Gandalf are kind of these monstrous characters. They're physically larger than him. One of them is a wizard. One of them is one of the greatest warriors the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
The greatest hunter and tracker.
Yeah.
It would solve the problem of the recasting issue with Viggo and with Ian McKellen. Because you could essentially have the whole movie where you're hardly ever seeing their face.
Yeah,
like
it would
an
feel
alien
like Predator almost.
Exactly.
Like,
An alien predator, like him literally being hunted, and that style of horror film I think that would be a lot of fun. And it would make sense to me with their involvement. But again, it has to be stated multiple times that we really know nothing more than what we said here at the beginning of the discussion. And so kind of anything is up for grabs. That's if I were writing a script, that's the direction that I would take it in.
Yeah.
As much as I love Gandalf and Aragorn, and it would be awesome to see them
in action,
in action together, kind of buddy cop adventure movie. Kind of gives me almost like Last of the Mohicans kind of vibes in my head.
Yeah.
Honestly, a movie of Aragorn just rangering, like I would watch him do it, especially if it's like, it's another one where it's like there almost wouldn't even need to be barely any talking. It's just him on the hunt. That actually just sounds like a good time. But they've made it pretty clear Gollum is the main character of this movie. At least I think they have. But it'll be interesting to see what that ends up looking like in practice, because I think you're right. I think they'll probably try to center Gollum there. And I almost wonder though if it'll be a movie of like contrasting perspectives. Maybe you get a little bit of both.
Maybe.
Sort of like the Last Duel, the Ridley Scott movie.
But it would kind of be a cool seeing the story from a different perspective of maybe starting out with him in Mordor, going through the torture and the questioning and everything, and being so mistreated at the hands of the orcs, and then being let go, but in his mind maybe escaping, but running away, trying to go start the trek to find Baggins and the Precious. Yeah. And then now there's these two new monsters that are hunting him. Yeah. And like that contrast where, he's just gotten out of Mordor and all of the horrors from there. And, maybe if that's the time that he escaped, if he left Mordor, I don't remember if he was kicked out the Black Gates specifically. I don't recall if it says specifically, or if he went through Shelob's lair and escaped that way, and that's when that relationship started, because we know that he's met Shelob and worked with her and has an understanding.
That's the thing that I'm thinking, though. The whole thing is such a compelling idea, because it took us 3 movies and so much time for us to just get Frodo there to Mordor, and Gollum somehow goes in and out. Well, he's like, I'm here, I'm not there, I'm running away from everybody, and getting away.
And that's one thing you have to remember in the books.
After even getting captured, he escapes. Yeah. It's like he's so slippery. It's like, this is an interesting dynamic that this kind of pathetic creature is able to kind of get away with all.
No, but that's a good point where which the movies do a great job of compressing for the sake of telling a movie, but is important to remember when you read the books is that years pass while most of the stuff we're talking about happens. Yeah. Like an enormous amount of time passes that technically I think still does pass in the movies, but it's just like it's just so vague. It's just not
minutes. Don't
mentioned.
Feel like 10 years.
Basically, from the end of the party to is it secret to is it safe, it's like 10 years goes by.
Yeah, I was gonna say
a decade.
It is kind of compressed like that in the books too, but there's the space to address it.
And there's like a there's like a paragraph or two mentioning it. But I do think, I do believe Gollum sneaks into Mordor through Shelob's lair,
Right.
and then is led out the Black Gate, if I remember correctly. Okay. And we may have some other Tolkien nerds tell us that's wrong, which honestly, if you notice something that's wrong, let us know. Yeah. We'll issue a correction on the next episode. But I do believe that's what happens.
Well, and maybe it starts that early. Maybe the hunt for Gollum is, maybe there's two hunts. Maybe it's him being hunted by Shelob and
like it's
by
just
orcs.
all of it, yeah. Like that would be a lot.
And then hunted by Aragorn and Gandalf at the end. That could also be interesting.
I definitely will be hopeful that that it's just a really good time and obviously a really great film. It is I do think it's interesting to think about the state of Hollywood storytelling right now, where it's really hard to get original stories told, whether they're in a IP world or not. We even saw a prequel story just this weekend open to less than ideal box numbers in Furiosa.
I can attest, though, personally, that those numbers definitely do not reflect, in this case, the quality of the film. And sometimes they do.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say.
Frequently, in fact, I'd say they do.
Didn't mean that it was interesting that there wasn't interest for it. Although I can't remember how well Fury Road did at the box office, to be honest.
I don't either. I don't. Yeah, but it was also, those were. I think it was a smash hit, ago. And I mean, it's obviously regarded.
It was the
as
first
the
one after
greatest
years and years
movie.
and years. So just like Jurassic World or whatever, when it came out,
I know they're
the greatest action movie ever made.
Yeah.
I know they're beloved.
21st century.
I know they're beloved, and again, I didn't mean to say Furiosa is also open to critical acclaim, but just not a lot of interest.
Yeah,
I do think the Lord of the Rings world has a lot more. There've been a lot fewer films. Well, not than Mad Max, I guess, but there've been a lot fewer films than like your Marvels and your Star Wars, where they've just been kind of pumping material out, and then and the DC world also, I think, which doesn't move the needle culturally at all. Lord of the Rings has a lot more interest and hasn't really had, even though the Hobbit films are kind of controversial or people have mixed feelings about those. They did really well at the box office. It's been like 15 years since they've come out, or 10 or so.
And COVID kind of
shifted things for sure.
It shifted people's relationship with watching movies.
Yeah. So I would love to see. I want to see more overall. I want to see good adaptions in the Middle Earth world. My faith in Hollywood to produce those adaptions or to do interesting things is probably the lowest it's ever been. Not necessarily in Lord of the Rings, just in general.
For sure.
Well, and I mean, place.
I have so much faith in the team that's behind it.
Right.
But I have less than no faith in David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers and Max.
Yeah. Well, and the weird thing too is, and we can maybe even talk about this a little bit. I have a mixed relationship with the Hobbit films. The book material that is adapted is nothing short of phenomenal. There's extra book material that's very good that gives some backstory. Obviously, I wish they had gone we've talked about this before, Stephen, not on the podcast, but I wish they had used more practical effects like they'd done in the original, which I know was the plan.
Yeah.
And then they use the CGI, which obviously, but the CGI is still very good. It's just not. It's just not as good.
Part of the problem with the CGI in that movie, ironically, is that it's in some ways, not all the time, but some of the time, it's too good. And
you're right.
There's the uncanny valley thing that you end up hitting with CGI, where it's like, it's so funny because we talked last episode about Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
The CGI in Phantom Menace holds up remarkably well.
Right.
But nobody is looking at Jar Jar Binks or any of the Gungans and thinking that those are real.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, even though it's older CG, it still holds up very well. Mm-hmm. Specifically like Azog, if you look at Azog,
yes,
it's stunning.
Yes, it
especially
is.
Considering is 11 years ago that the movie came out.
But it is. It's almost too good.
But it's so good that but you know that it's not real. You know it's not makeup on a real actor.
Yeah.
And so there is a thing in our brains that is a survival mechanism, so we didn't get eaten by Neanderthals or whoever.
Yeah.
like that thing that is like that's
just
too
weird.
real looking.
It's just very strange.
And I know it's not real, and it triggers something, and it can throw you off a little bit.
Well, and interestingly, I prefer the Moria orcs from the Lord of the Rings films, from their vibe overall. They're obviously just scarier too, but the Misty Mountains orcs and the Great Goblin in the film don't bother me as much because they're stylized. Sure. Yeah. I still prefer the practical effects, but the chase scene's a little silly. But it's funny with those films where this is a point I wanted to make, and we'll see what ends up happening. But the things that I don't enjoy sometimes in the Hobbit films are some of the very childish stuff, like the infamous barrel riding scenes, just goofy. And again, but and to be clear, like children love that stuff, and they are movies made with 10-year-olds in mind. So, I get what they were doing there, and I like while I wish it was toned up a little more, and I felt like they towed that line where there's action scene stuff happening in the Lord of the Rings films. It's a little less kitschy and just a little less silly. There's more of that I felt in the Hobbit films for whatever reason, in a way that I didn't enjoy. But that being said, and again, to repeat, the book that adapted material, there are cuts that I don't endorse by the films that you can find on the internet if you were a bad person and watched those, that just adapt mostly book material that are a really phenomenal watch if you wanted to go to jail to watch those.
Do they cut out Legolas's?
They cut out. There is no Legolas in those films. There is no dwarf elf love scene. There is no barrel riding goofiness, and it's just phenomenal book adaptation. Okay.
What about the goats that go up the mountain in like 5 minutes?
I don't remember the goats.
Hey, that's if you watch goat footage, like mountain goat footage, like that's not that unrealistic.
Nice. The most
goats do stuff like that.
So one thing I want to say. Well, go ahead.
Sorry. What I wanted to say though was the issues that were mostly that silliness. I felt like in the Hobbit films, which obviously. That is more in tone with the Hobbits in general. I just don't think you're going to do that. I'm sure there will be humor because Gollum is a funny character in the other movies, and Circus's version of Gollum is very funny. But I don't think that kind of cartoonish silliness will be a part of this movie. I could be wrong. So that gives me a little hope, but I'm curious to see what this then ends up looking like. In that was really what my final point.
Well, and I'm sure at some point we'll talk when we discuss book to film adaptations. At some point we'll do a more in-depth discussion of the Hobbit films. Yeah. But one thing I do want to point out that is a defense of the movies, but is more a defense of Peter Jackson, but also is kind of something that pumps the brakes on my optimism just a little bit for this project, is that I personally, and I don't know that anybody honestly can put most of the blame for the things that were incorrect or didn't go as well with the Hobbit films on Peter Jackson and his team. Because he wasn't supposed to direct it. It was supposed to be Del Toro. Yep. And pretty much everything down the line you could very reasonably and honestly put at Warner Brothers' feet. Yes. Mm-hmm. They drug out the contract negotiations with the Australian and New Zealand SAG Actors Guild. That I think was the main reason that the schedule got so pushed that Del Toro had to leave. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that then, when Peter Jackson got on board and they finally got the green light to start production, insisted on it being a trilogy. It was originally going to just be 2 movies, which is reasonable. I think it would be hard to adapt The Hobbit into just one film.
I think so, right. But 2 would be fine. One
live-action film, 2 would have been great.
2 would be fine.
And so then they had to all of a sudden fill a third movie's worth of material. Yeah. And they're also the ones that set the extremely rigid deadlines. Yeah. That is the reason why they had to do so much CG. If you go back and look at the making ofs of the Hobbit films, the Moria or the Lonely Mountain orcs, the goblins, they were building these really cool practical suits for the actors to wear, where they were like developing it was like big prosthetics. They were going for the same look that they ended up making, but it was all in big prosthetic suits that had like very thin translucent skins where you could like see the muscles and stuff underneath them. It was really cool, but they just didn't have the time to tweak them enough that they would look good on 4K resolution.
Well, I think it was 3D at the time too.
And I also, I mean, I don't know. I was just having a discussion with my buddies Kevin and Justin Esslinger about this. I don't know if Peter Jackson wanted to do 3D. He's definitely very technology forward.
Yeah.
I am going to assume that was also a Warner Brothers decision because it was only a few years after Avatar came out.
It was a trend at the time.
So they wanted something that was going to beat Avatar. And so I don't know. I kind of have always assumed that 3D was on Warner Brothers and maybe the 48 frames per second was on Peter Jackson wanting to try to push the technology further.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that didn't work. But me and my buddies were also talking about is if you don't have that 48 frames per second, you probably also don't then have Peter Jackson's absolute masterpiece of a World War I documentary, They Will Not Grow Old.
Yeah.
Where I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's the one where he got unprecedented access to the archival footage from the British Museum of the War. And colorized it. Like invented all new practices for colorizing film, and then also fixed the frame rate to 24 frames per second.
Oh wow,
nice.
And those were all hand cranked,
right?
So it's never the same, especially during combat footage where it's they're trying desperately to do the proper hand cranking, and so they had to can create a whole new editing software to essentially using, I guess, early AI kind of technology, fill in the missing frames.
Wow.
To get it smooth, and it's absolutely phenomenal.
I didn't even know that existed.
But anyways, getting off track here. So all that to say, like I've previously mentioned, I have supreme confidence in Peter Jackson and that whole team. But this is still Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. Call it Warner Brothers, call it Max. It's the same people.
Yeah.
And so that gives me some pause. It's not a great track record, but we'll see.
Yep. No, my guess is they will be an enjoyable to watch overall. I mean, unless it's just like, or it could be kind of, I guess I could take that back. They could be kind of painful to watch, but well done.
Yeah,
because it could just be a bad time with Gollum for 2 or 3 hours, And I don't mean a bad time as like, again, not a worthwhile experience. But I could imagine it'd be like what movie you watch and you're like, wow, really glad I watched that. I maybe never want to watch it again.
This was a movie of them just beating the shit out of Gollum for 2 hours.
Yeah, that absolutely feels possible. Which also, I think there'll be something interesting there. Not to imagine a backlash to the film now, but if we do get Gollum's perspective, Gandalf even admits he dealt pretty harshly with Gollum, and I think Aragorn does too. If this movie seems like it's recontextualizing Gandalf's and Aragorn's heroism in any way, I think people might react really negatively to the film, even though that would be accurate both to the book and to Gollum's potential perspective. I wonder when we get to 2026 if people are like, they're trying to make Aragorn a bad guy. They're trying to,
right.
It'll be interesting to see how that comes across and then how people react to it, especially because people are often willing to rage about things they don't even really even know what like they might not even see the movie and be mad about it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm optimistic. I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff. I will say, none of it's been Lord of the Rings related, but I have been very pleasantly surprised recently by a string of things. I did not. My expectations for Fallout were very low.
Yeah,
to be frank.
Yeah.
And then once they started releasing photos and the trailers, I was very excited and then not disappointed at all. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Borderlands movie is like. It's the same thing. And when I first heard it was happening, I was like, I don't know that this is going to be good. Like, this is probably going to suck.
They're kind of doing video game movies good now.
Frankly, Last of Us set the bar.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're kind of, they used to be like obviously bad for years, and now it's like they're kind of like
there's no excuse anymore.
People kind of like the Mario movie and the Sonic movies too.
My kids love both.
Yeah,
and that's what and frankly, like I enjoyed them. I mostly enjoyed them because I was watching them with my kids and they were enjoying them so much. But I'm not the target audience. I didn't play the games as kids, as myself, and I'm also, going to be 35 in a couple weeks. So it's like it's not for me; it's for them, and so it definitely hit the audience.
So I'll piggyback on that thought that this is not sci-fi or fantasy, but I'm a big fan of the Talented Mr. Ripley movie, which came out in 1999, and Netflix just released this year, I think, the best show they've ever put out, called Ripley, which is an adaptation of the same book, The Talented Mr. Ripley, but told from a very different lens, with Andrew Scott playing Ripley. Literally one of the best performances I've ever seen. But Andrew Scott's incredible. Which leads me to my final point, which is maybe a hot take. That one, it's another adaptation that's really good. It's something done very well. I can't remember the filmmaker's name, but it's literally one of the best shot things I've ever watched, any medium ever. It is so phenomenal. And that movie came out in 1999, and it's 2024. So this means in 2 years it'll be time to do the new Lord of the Rings movies, is what I'm saying. And we need a new voice, not because the other was bad, because the Talented Mr. Ripley is great. The new Ripley is also great. We just need, the Lord of the Rings is big. We can have new takes. We can have new takes on the characters, but it should be a very thoughtful, very granularly done show, and or a 6-part movies. We're just gonna triple it and do one movie per actual book, the way it's laid out in 6 books. So I'm planting my flag now. New Lord of the Rings, 2 years.
Look, as long as we get Tom Bombadil in some degree.
Get your milk. Get your milk, everybody. The spicy takes are starting.
Spicy takes are starting.
Tom Bombadil. He has to happen at some point. At this point.
And my point here is to sort of say is like, no one's ever, we never do a production of Hamlet. Now I know theater is different than film, but we never do a production of Hamlet and they're like, that's it. We've done Hamlet now. There's no more Hamlet. It's like, no, we do it again. We can do it again. We can dive into the world. It's like, I think Lord of the Rings is like that. We can go back. We can plumb the depths. Now, we do need to do a good job and voice it. It's not that the other movies are bad. They can both exist. We shouldn't remake Star Wars because that's weird, but we can do it with Lord of the Rings.
On that
we can do it with Lord of the Rings.
Let's have a new Luke Skywalker. Someone else could be Luke. Tom Holland,
and this
maybe.
is a good point. And I think one thing that makes Lord of the Rings different from, because you see in the discussions online a lot of similarities between, like, people talking about the MCUification of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that separates Lord of the Rings from Marvel and Star Wars specifically is there is a very set canon.
Yes.
The only things, to my mind, the only things that are canon are the books that have J.R.R. Tolkien's name on it.
Absolutely.
If Christopher Tolkien had written his own books, I would say that those are canon because he put so much work. His entire life was devoted to his father's work.
Well,
I would honorarily put the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy as canon.
Yeah, no,
because they're the impact
I get it. They're phenomenal.
But what that means to me is that, like, you can do more video games, you can do more movies, you can do more shows, and if they're great, awesome, amazing. We're fans. We love Lord of the Rings. I want to see more. I want to live in that world more. I'm happy for it. But if it stinks, then
I know that is the worry. Most people that don't want new adaptions just assume they're going to be bad, which I honestly am sympathetic to that feeling. But I think, I just want a Robert Eggers Lord of the Rings, because I don't know how we make it happen. He's probably not even interested. But
or Del Toro,
let's do it. I mean, that would also be wonderful.
Like, give him the reins again.
Because honestly, the Lord of the Rings world is very creepy. It's very scary, and that does come across in the Jackson films, but it's not actually focused on. Which is what I'm saying. And I mean, no disrespect to the Jackson movies, which are phenomenal, but also you could do a less actiony Lord of the Rings. You could do a more psychological Lord of the Rings. You could do a more horror Lord of the Rings.
Well, then you would actually get more in touch with the power of each of the rings, because they are so not like fireball out of the ring.
Yeah, there's
like,
a lot
mostly
of
like I get to be invisible, and it's like
there's a lot of room in the world for more takes, for more viewpoints. Is all I'm saying. And again, obviously, I want them to be done, true to the books as they can be. I don't want someone to just take swings to just be different than the other movies. That's the stuff you don't want to see. But
I love that take.
Yeah,
I honestly do, and I didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I had a hot take that I didn't believe that I had planned for today, which was gonna be that the Harry Potter movies are better adaptations than the Lord of the Rings movies.
I don't think that's a burns my butthole spicy take.
The point is that they're not better. The point is they're not better movies, but they're more true to the actual.
I don't even know that that's.
I don't
true.
know that it's
the
true
only
either.
time that my dad has
wanted
ever
to say
gotten
it.
pissed off. That I remember.
I think maybe like that's like a fortune cookie like thing. We just read them like interesting. Anyways,
so my dad just read the books in the last year for the first time, and he went back. He had watched all the movies before a long time ago, but he called me furious about the last movie because of the changes that had been made.
See, and honestly, the issue there is I haven't reread them in a really long time.
I mean,
so I probably
Expelliarmus.
forgot. They'd say it wrong.
That's the last. It's the one that like beats Voldemort, and he doesn't really say that. Like you can kind of infer.
But anyways,
I just wanted to reveal a hot take that I had planned that I didn't really mean, and if this podcast had been a week ago, I might have said it. You know what? I wouldn't have meant it then.
Here's even hotter take: Aragon. The way that they did that, way better than the book.
The dragon book written by a 13-year-old?
Oh yeah, perfect.
You mean the fantasy book written by a 13-year-old that is very obviously written by a 13-year-old?
What, Game of Thrones?
No disrespect.
Just kidding. Mostly because of the sex. Yeah,
okay.
It's a puberty joke.
All right, boys. Well, that was a great discussion. Any last final thoughts to add?
I'm kind of just excited for
Gollum,
another movie to be made.
Screw that guy that saved everybody in the end.
Yeah, well,
it
is funny by being terrible.
But see, that's why they're making a movie about Gollum, because he's actually the most relatable character.
Turns out being the worst makes you good.
So I know everybody's seen this meme, but there's also the thing that floats around every once in a while that does actually get me emotional thinking about sometimes, where Gandalf flies to rescue Sam and Frodo at the end after the ring has been destroyed.
Right.
And there's a third eagle.
Oh, meant for Gollum.
Meant to pick up Gollum.
I've seen that, yeah.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever noticed that.
Because Gandalf knew at that point that Gollum was with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't know what would have happened.
Yeah,
but was willing.
Was prepared.
Was
still
willing to bring him back.
Oh,
if he had lived.
No, that makes sense.
So on that note.
Yeah.
All right. I have. Have you guys read this list yet?
No.
Okay. Awesome. Cool.
I'm
okay.
ready for a surprise.
So, all right. Now pour yourself a tall glass of milk.
I might pour some.
And some alcohol because, oh boy, we have a list here to talk about. So this is the 30 greatest book series of all time. Of all time, officially.
Of all time.
Of all time.
30 greatest
30 greatest book series.
I mean, if those aren't the first 30 of the Bible, I don't.
Well, again, I need to specify.
Well, you said spicy, okay? I'm just thinking
30 greatest book series of all time. Doesn't specifically say sci-fi fantasy, just a book series of all time.
The Bible's sci-fi.
Now, I'm not gonna read the intro to this, but what I do want to note specifically is that the conditions for this series, like the criteria that they had for coming up with this list, and this is Forbes.
Oh, this is not you.
Forbes. This is not me, and this is not some like little blog on the internet. This is
Steven,
Forbes.
this is your list, right?
I wrote this list for Forbes.
Listen, if it was
I
your
want you
list,
to know that it's on Forbes. I'm published on Forbes, and this is my list.
Like, why am I doing a podcast if I'm writing for Forbes?
No.
I mean, if this was your list, I'd have respect, but I'm already offended.
But no, you have no. You're gonna.
I'm already offended.
You're about to get. You're about to get really angry.
We're ready.
So
this should not be an authority.
So this is the criteria for this list is vague. It's not that vague. I'll read this specifically. So this article covers a range of genres from fantasy to science fiction. What a wide range.
Yeah. Really setting the scope there.
And rankings are based on specific factors, including critical acclaim, commercial success, mass appeal, and cultural impact.
Okay.
So bear that in mind.
Okay.
That there are additional factors beyond commercial success. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that.
Because there are certain things that we'll look at that you're going to hear that if it's just purely commercial success, makes kind of sense. Okay. All right. I'm just going to kind of breeze through this.
Okay.
Are we starting at the bottom?
React how you feel.
Okay.
And then
we're
we'll
doing
discuss.
top down or bottom up?
Bottom up.
Bottom up.
Yeah.
So at number 30.
Bottoms up.
Bottoms up.
At number 30, The Expanse by James S.A. Corey.
Okay.
Okay.
That feels really nice of them.
29, The Southern Reach by Jeff Vandermeer. Not
Okay.
heard about it, but that's fine.
Oh, that's the Annihilation.
Yes, you're right. Yes,
yeah.
it is. Yes.
Which I've read part of the first one. The movie was good.
Number 28 is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
Fair enough. Great.
Cool.
27, The Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. I've read the first 3 books, and they're incredible.
Okay.
And I have thoughts come with some other things coming up on this list.
The cultural impact.
Number 26, Thursday Next Series by Jasper Ford.
Okay.
Not familiar, but good on him. Great.
Yep.
Number 25, The Bartimaeus Trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. Familiar with Jonathan Stroud, but not that specific trilogy. Good on him. 24, The King Killer Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss, which is not complete. But there you go. That's 2 books.
Kind of. I know they're beloved, but it is kind of strange to have an incomplete.
I mean, talk about a good start, you know?
Yeah, but that's a whole deal.
This is critically
we'll talk about that
acclaimed.
at
This
some
is
other
not
point.
done.
23, The Ryeri Revelations, I apologize, by Michael J. Sullivan. It's supposed to be amazing. We'll read them at some point.
Clearly Forbes likes it.
22, The Witcher Saga by Andrzej Sapkowski.
Okay.
That
Love
feels
Witcher.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
22 sounds okay until we get further down. 21, The Belgariad by David Ennings. Again, another classic that we will be reading at some point.
Cool.
It's supposed to be great. No problem. The Earth-Sea Cycle, same deal.
Yep.
Ursula K. Le Guin, no
Classic.
issue with that being on this list. Number 19, Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. Not read it. No opinions.
Good movie.
Our
Really good
first
Did they not say sci-fi fantasy?
Yep. So take that as you will.
Okay.
I mean, it's like fantasy and like, you know, it's not a real story.
It's not.
It's not. Yeah, it's
not-
fiction.
I mean,
it's fiction.
as much as
And
Seinfeld is
all
fiction.
fiction is fantasy on some level.
technically,
Hey, it's
Seinfeld
like
is fantasy.
It's like we talked about. Those genres are settings,
Right.
not genres.
Well, get that. Yeah, it's a setting list.
So,
yeah, so
18,
Crazy Rich Asians is definitely sci-fi set in just like normal Hong Kong, normal like family dynamics.
number
sci-fi
18.
genre.
Hold on, we got to keep going.
Okay.
Number 18, Goosebumps by R.L. Stein.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay, fine,
Yep.
great. Number 17, The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher.
Fair enough.
Fair
That
enough.
makes sense.
Probably too high, but fair enough. 16, Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan.
I
would have loved
I'm
them.
a sucker for that. I'm a
Yeah.
sucker for
They're
that.
kids' books.
If they had come out, if they had started earlier, I would have loved them.
I'm
if
sure.
they had started in 2000 instead of 2005.
I didn't read them. I was.
I would've loved
Yeah,
them.
I'd aged out.
The Hardy Boys.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of
That's fine.
classic, right?
Yep,
Like
it's classic.
It's like
I
the
was more
Boxcar
of a.
Kids.
They really are just any book that's a series, which I guess that's what it's titled.
I was a 3
I mean,
Investigators
I
fan.
really hope some Mary
That's
Kate
right.
and Ashley's up at the top because they made some killer books. Huge
Okay,
cultural
we're about to
impacts.
start getting into
Okay.
to funky, spicy territory here. So
They get
Okay.
weird the
hold
higher
on
up
to
you
your
go.
butts.
Okay.
14, The Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. Fair enough.
Okay.
See, that's what I'm
No-
saying.
no
We should read
issues.
some
We-
Asimov.
we- yeah, we
13, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams.
That's
Okay.
fine. Those are
Great,
fun.
fun. Number
Beloved.
12, His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman.
I
Another
mean,
beloved
HBO made a
series.
show on
Fantastic,
that.
They
great.
did too.
11, The Dark Tower by Stephen King.
Okay.
No issues there.
Sure. Idris Elba.
Number
is in
10,
that.
Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
That's supposed to be good,
Great.
right?
Yep. No issues. Zero issues. All right. Number 9, Discworld by Terry Pratchett. Again, zero issues with this
Yeah.
being here.
Yep.
Number 8, Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin.
Right. That checks
Also
out.
unfinished, but it deserves to be on this list.
No,
It had a
I
whole show
probably
made.
deserves to be
I have
higher.
a little problem with an unfinished series being on the list, to be totally honest, but I do understand why it is.
Well, and let's be real. This is maybe as
it's
finished
never
as it's
going to be. We might get one more.
We might.
And then
All
we're
right.
going to get Dunk and Egg before we get
Yeah,
book 7.
We definitely will.
So,
I mean, that's fine because that story's like.
So are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Here we go.
go.
This is where it starts getting hard. All right, quit looking.
Sorry.
It's number 7, Outlander by Diana Gabaldon.
Okay.
I apologize, Diana. I'm sure I butchered your last name.
We no apologies. She's on number 6
okay.
on Forbes. you know?
Like
The show?
no, the book series that
I
the
think
show
it's
is
based on a book.
So
like Poldark.
now, okay, hold on. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Wait, what are we at? 6?
That was 7. 6.
Oh, okay, 6.
Ever drink.
Okay.
I mean, sure.
All right, number 6 on the 30 greatest book series of all time. 50 Shades by E.L.
What?
James. Number 6. We'll get back to this.
I honestly didn't remember there was more than one.
Hey, well, seriously though, fantasy,
Hold on.
absolutely.
51
That
Shades
is
of Grey.
fantasy.
We're gonna get back to that. Okay, we're gonna address this in more detail in a moment.
Okay.
Number 5, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins.
That's really high.
That's
Number
super,
4,
super high.
Twilight Saga by Stephanie Meyer.
Okay.
Number 3, Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
Wow.
Number 2, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Okay.
Not one.
And number 1, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling.
Okay.
So it's like, man, I don't have a whole lot of issues with the final 3, but
Potter over Lord of the
Jesus
Rings
Christ.
is bad.
well, yes, and that's
But
when if
I-
you're gonna
well,
bring in like monetary
I
things,
do. When I think of cultural impact,
Has Potter actually sold more than Lord of the
it's
Rings?
not for me. It's not sales. It's
I have not
it's a
seen the
matter
numbers,
of
but I'm sure that it has.
the gap closing. Because I grew up as
No, me too.
90. We like aged with. I was in the same grade level as Harry as the books were being released. That whole thing was what made everyone my age actually read. I was already a
I
nerd
know.
reading, but then the people that weren't nerds started reading. So I would
Yeah.
say that Harry Potter Holding 1 kind of makes sense. In my book, it's like a blasphemy.
And that's
'cause
obviously
Tolkien
not
is
the-
when we
Tolkien's
and
not.
we all, I
I
think
the Lord of the Rings is 70 years old now, too.
we
what I'm
would
saying.
probably, whether it
70
is
years
correct or
ago-
not, put Lord of the Rings in 1.
That's
That's what I'm
because
saying.
That's where it
I
goes.
absolutely. Tolkien
However,
is 1 for me.
that is not the issue with this list.
No, it
The
is not.
issue is that ahead of Song of Ice and Fire, ahead of Discworld, ahead of Wheel of Time, ahead of His Dark Materials, ahead of The Expanse, Foundation series, Red Rising, is 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
Which,
And Twilight. And I'm less angry about this, for sure, but Hunger Games.
Yeah. Less angry, but yes, still.
Now I
Yeah.
understand that like the reason
Those-
that I wanted to point out the criteria that this list was written under is that I understand that 50 Shades of Grey, Twilight, and Hunger Games all had big cultural impacts and they all sold a lot of books.
yeah.
However, I don't see how you could in good conscience ever put them in the top 10 of the 30 greatest book series ever written. It's not the 30 most lucrative books ever series
Right,
ever written.
yeah.
It's not the 30 most culturally impactful series ever written. It's the
No.
30 greatest book series ever written.
Yeah,
See, it-
cultural and money, like that makes it. I don't think 50 Shades belongs there at all.
50 Shades shouldn't be the.
That's not even
Listed.
a fantasy. Is it sci-fi?
It's fanfic.
Like-
It's Twilight fanfic is literally what it was.
yeah, but
and
there's
it
no
just
world.
happens
It's like
to
they're
get-
just in New York, like just each other.
Well, and I understand that this isn't that like they showed us with some of the other entries that this is not a specifically sci-fi fantasy.
No,
list,
no,
even though those
no,
are the
no,
only
no.
two genres that they listed.
Which
at the
is
beginning.
confusing.
If you're thinking it definitely applies to fantasy.
It literally is just book
Can we
series.
put 50 Shades in our like next round of reading?
Yeah,
Like,
for
we
sure.
should
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
We owe
We
it
can't
to
get
Yeah,
it.
into
that'll
that
be the start of
material.
our
We can watch the
Arthurian
movie
series.
as well.
So
Arthurian series.
yeah, 50 Shades being
It's
there at
actually
all
based
is-
on Arthur.
Yeah, there you
is-
go.
and it,
Guinevere, you know.
it is weird. I guess it has had an outsized cultural impact. So on the and like, but quality of it. You
That's
would
what I mean.
think
It's the
needs
greatest.
to be. Yeah, it's rough. Because honestly, I would I wouldn't have them there I have no idea what I would do for my top 30, to be honest. But Hunger Games being in that like 25-ish range, and same for Twilight, kind of makes some sense to me.
I've not read Hunger Games.
So Hunger Games on a cultural impact, yes, again, it has the same sort of undertones that Harry Potter did in my experience, but also seeing the younger kids like that kind of brought them into reading again. And I love when a book series creates a world that is that is able to bring everyone into reading the same thing,
especially when there are sections
so
of the huge swaths of the country that only have 50,000 people in them.
Yes. Yeah, especially when a whole district is wiped out and there was 10,000 people died. Like that was your whole district. Like
I know.
Bro, how big is your nation?
I will say that
what are we, tribes?
Not that it's the economics of the Hunger Games make no sense. It does not work.
Oh, it is filled
society
with
could not exist in that way. And I don't even mean in the world where it's like a dystopian society. Like obviously it doesn't work. It's a bad society. The point is it literally is impossible. It's just, it wouldn't work. And I'm a Hunger Games realist, and it drives me nuts.
Seriously, because the oppression alone is so insane. It's like you're just torturing these people.
Well,
how does society even
It
exist?
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Again, I have not
Top
read
10
Hunger
though.
Games. I've not read Hunger Games, so I am going to speak out of my ass a
I
little
think
bit.
it would
However,
make you very mad. I actually want to see
probably would.
Stephen live reading Hunger Games. I just want to see what happens.
I love dystopian stuff, and I don't know. Supposedly they're great. That's fine.
No, I know.
It's fine.
I'm not even
it's
trying
not
to-
written for me.
Nah,
It's not for me.
So
It's
mad.
written for the elf that lives under my shoes.
But here's the thing. This pissed me off because I just finished reading the first 3 books. Again, I acknowledge fully that I'm speaking out of my ass a little
What
bit.
books? Are we talking about Twilight?
The Red Rising. By Pierce Brown.
Yeah.
It is, to be frank, one of the reasons why it took me so long to read them was because it is so widely compared to Hunger Games. And I can see why, as far as like some dystopian sci-fi elements, kind of fractured, tiered society. The first book has some definite kind of Hunger Games event elements to it. However, man, it's awesome. It's so well written. I breezed through those first 3 books in
That sounds good.
like a week and a half, and not because they're poorly written, but because I couldn't stop reading them, and it's just so well paced, so fast paced, and going from like fist pumping in the air, just so pumped to be reading these books, to the closest I've ever come to throwing a book across the room and never picking it up again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And because it is so compared to Hunger Games and has some striking similarities to what I understand the Hunger Games to be, I highly disagree with it being so far below Hunger Games on this list.
It's interesting that list felt like has a very successful adaptation list more than anything else.
Yeah. But even then, The Expanse, I guess it wasn't wildly popular, but it had a pretty popular show.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
To be last on the list is kind of weird with that one.
Yeah.
These are just series too, right? Like not just standalone novels.
It's just series. And
When I get it, but like Gene Wolfe's, Book of the New Sun and/or the Solar Cycle, you feel like that. I mean, that's that as
if
a
we're
literary
talking
chain,
greatest
right?
series of all time. Again,
Right.
I feel like this list
Book
probably should have been
series.
called either the most successful adaptations of all time, or perhaps like the most financially lucrative. I could come up with a shinier and not like as Scrooge like title as that.
To me, it's like the Billboard Music Awards, where they literally just give the award to the guy. We already know who won, because it's just like, who sold the most records? It's like Justin Bieber again. He sold a bunch of records.
Justin Bieber must be making the greatest music of all time.
Right.
But again, no disrespect to Justin Bieber, or maybe some, but
some.
But that's not the point. It's not the point. It's just the Billboard Music Awards are just they give an award to the guy that sold the most,
I like
and
his
girl.
songs. They're
No,
fun.
there's. I mean, that's not my point.
So I mean, a
That
healthy
song,
amount of
that
disrespect.
song, Boyfriend. Yeah.
Just a healthy amount, not overboard. Nothing overboard.
Yeah,
just a healthy
Boyfriend
amount
is a
of
great
disrespect.
song.
You come for us, Bieber fans.
Yeah.
We're out here to set the record straight that his music is trash and he just sells a lot.
mediocre.
He hasn't released an album in like.
I
7
mean,
years.
I really like
in our
that
mid-
song.
I
Sorry,
also-
that
I know,
song.
I
like Sorry
pretty
too.
good.
Like, let's be real. Like, we're all men in our
Yeah.
mid-30s. We're the exact opposite.
What are you talking
of
about?
his
Justin
target
Bieber
group.
is a man in his
funny
mid
story.
30s.
Funny story.
Justin Bieber's our age.
My wife and I. Sorry was like a song I also enjoyed. I played Sorry.
You used to just say sorry to your
I
wife.
said I played Sorry on our first date to make her laugh, and we had a home birth for our first daughter, and obviously birth is intense, labor is intense, and there was a tense moment. She had a playlist picked, and I knew we needed to lighten the mood, so I played Sorry.
Oh my god,
during
dude!
labor. Everybody
Justin
laughed.
Bieber,
It was the
Justin
whole
Bieber
thing.
is in your top 10.
I
Yeah.
did something similar.
Yeah.
My wife had a whole set list plan, and when we got to the birthing center, I instead of starting that like I said I was going to, I played "Happy Boy" by the Beat Farmers.
There we go.
Yeah.
There
Look
we go.
that up.
I mean,
if you've
didn't
not
one of
heard
our
it,
best
and-
friends play "Who Let the Dogs Out" at his wedding, like reception?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like some of these,
To describe
these are-
the single men that were dancing at the wedding.
yeah, it's like top. These are top 10 artists, greatest songs of all time.
No, they're great. No, Sorry's a great track. But yeah, this list is very brutal. I just can't believe even if you had 50 Shades at 30, it would feel disrespectful.
Just
Well, here's
being
the thing
on
too,
there.
like you mentioned jokingly.
I didn't even
at
like
the-
Crazy Rich Asians being on there.
Well, like you
Also,
mentioned
is it
jokingly at the beginning of the Bible, if this is going to be purely a list based on financials
yeah.
Yeah.
and like number of units sold,
Oh yeah, the Bible should be
that
number
Bible
one.
is going to be number one. hands down.
That's been bestseller since like
Yeah.
So like
BC.
it's even in that regard, it's not accurate.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I don't know.
Is it 50 Shades of Grey and then 50 Shades of Black, or is it
think
50
it's like
Shades of Grey then 51
It's like
Shades of
50
Grey?
other. I think it's 50 other shades of gray.
50 other
50
shades?
more shades of gray?
252 shades?
Look, if you just move the dial by one, you
And
can
then
come
it's
up with
just
way
it's
more
just
than
the
50.
it's just shades.
Yeah, just shades.
Just gray.
But with the e's the three's the e's a 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a series though? Because that's
It
just.
is. It's a trilogy.
So
I think
wait,
we're gonna.
Crazy Rich
Okay.
Asians is a series?
50 Shades of Grey, 252 Shades, and then Shades with a 3.
Yep, I'm pretty sure that is. Okay.
Oh, and then the next one is just called like in New York.
So it's 50
Don't
shades.
try and church it
This
up,
is
son.
so stupid. 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker,
Okay.
That I mean, that you got to hit black at some
and
point.
then what is
right?
this?
Like,
Is this real? What is this?
that's the title of the book.
Dark. And then it's darker, 50 Shades Darker, as told by Christian.
Oh, okay.
I don't
So
know.
wait,
but
what
the
is-
main, but the,
Yeah,
thing, the
whatever.
important thing is that these.
What's Crazy
He's
Rich
not a
Asians?
vampire anymore, is he? It's just a guy.
No, it's
right?
just a guy. That's the thing.
Wait.
It's literally just fanfic from. It's Twilight fanfic,
Yeah.
and
It's
it
disappointing.
got. I mean, good on her. She
If he was a
No,
doesn't have to
and-
ever worry
and-
about money ever again.
No,
she got
she
her
made a-
fanfic published, read by women all over the world.
And they made a
and
movie.
men, there's some men's.
I'm sure,
men's read
but
it.
like
But guys, wait, is Crazy Rich Asians a trilogy or something?
I am not sure. I
Because
only
if
knew,
it's not-
I think it's a
honestly, this is me expressing my ignorance, but I did not know that was a book series. I just thought it was a movie.
I knew there was a book. Yeah, it's books.
Well, I mean, I would
Asking
figured
to
it-
Google, and
I
it does
figured
say
it-
that there is
I
books, so
figured
it is
it
a
had-
series.
Okay. I was
As
gonna
long as you're
say-
not reading the Google AI, which could be telling you anything at this
It
point.
could be telling me anything.
I do. We should ask Google AI when it's top 30 best fantasy.
Google AI, what are the top best
Honestly, it might be pretty
book series?
pretty accurate.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, 50
I don't
Shades
know.
should
There you
not
go.
be in
Forbes.
All right.
Swing and I don't know. I'm not even going to say swing and a miss because again, the top three
Some
was
of the-
decent.
some of the
others
stuff
it's just
made
like,
sense.
Man, 3 of those were stinkers,
It had
guys.
like,
Like,
good,
Yeah.
it had good sections. Like I liked where they put a lot of stuff like below 20.
yeah.
If we just moved that
yeah, it was
all up
alright.
by 20, I feel like that would have been.
Wheel of Time should just be higher for how many books are in the series.
Yeah.
It should
And
just
it
be.
has an Amazon
Honestly, they
show.
should have just ranked them by most books.
Most books. Well, then Discworld would be at number
This
1.
book were it's like 30 or
who
it's
has
40
who has Dune is not even in there.
Dune wasn't even
Dune
listed.
wasn't listed.
Oh my!
Isn't
I can't
even
even
in
remember.
there.
I can't even.
Let's
I
think-
not even
let's
noticed
do-
Dune wasn't
That's
even
pretty
in there.
dang lucrative.
Dune wasn't there. Conan wasn't there.
Nope.
Yeah.
Fawford wasn't there.
Yeah, but Fawford
makes
wasn't going to.
sense. That
Fawford
makes
wasn't going to be
sense.
there.
It should be there.
To be honest,
Absolutely.
I don't
feel
think
like
we've
Ready
read-
Player One should have been there, but that's only one book.
We haven't
so.
read
Well,
enough
that-
Fawford
yeah,
to say
well-
if it's going to be in there, if it should be in the top 30. The three Fawford books that we read are absolutely phenomenal, but I think there's some stinkers in there that we
Yeah.
haven't
I
read yet.
still can't believe Dune is not.
Dune was not.
Dune is a huge omission.
Jupiter Ascending wasn't in there.
Okay, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening.
We're going off the rails.
It's very
That list was
spicy.
trash.
So yeah, it was.
I do. I
well,
mean, I
here's the
like
thing.
1, 2,
Forbes,
3.
cancel yourself.
Forbes is canceled.
Forbes is canceled. Forbes, so unsubscribe from Forbes. Forbes is over. End it now. The tyranny is over. Cancel the internet on Forbes. Just Forbes' internet. Your subscription. No more magazines.
Like
They're
if
li-
Forbes,
go further.
if
Go
Forbes
further.
has Comcast just cut it.
No,
Cut it.
No, I say go further. Go farther. Cancel the whole internet.
Yeah, you know what?
All of it.
At
You
this
can't even
point-
watch this anymore.
At
Cancel
this
all
point-
of it. It's done.
This is
We're
pointless.
just-
Everything we're doing
it's
is
just
fruitless. No
over.
internet. Yeah.
It's
over.
just over because of this list is bad. Even though most of it was fine, actually, and there was just a few either things that were too high or shouldn't be there.
I mean, at least it's not like a Trump Biden situation. You know.
that's a good point.
And on that note, this has been another episode of Under Towers Fantasy Podcast. I'm Steven. and-
I am Daniel.
I'm neither of
Oh,
them.
you were going to talk more.
No, and you can find me on Instagram at I am Citizen Insane.
Right. I am the Mighty Oak.
I am part of the Under Towers podcast. Follow us on Under Towers podcast.
On
Yes.
all of the social media bullshits.
Yes.
We love you.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
Adios.
Bye, Crom.